So here we are, Emirates Stadium, Arsenal versus Wolfsburg in the Champions League semi-final, sold out. I never thought those words would come out of my mouth for an Arsenal women game at Emirates Stadium. I was at the game the last time that this was a semi-final in 2013. I was there at the home leg at Meadow Park. 1,400 people there that day. I believe it was a Saturday afternoon, sunny Saturday afternoon, and it's really mind-blowing to think that there are going to be 60,000 people here today. The record attendance for an Arsenal women's game at the Emirates before this season was 12,000. That was against Barcelona last season. So to think we're going to have 5 times that amount in this stadium today, just over a year later, just absolutely mind-blowing. And I think it's a real credit to the club for the way they've marketed this, how quickly they got the tickets on sale. I know they pushed UEFA hard to get to announce the date of this game. UEFA, they dragged their feet a lot on things like that, but Arsenal were very insistent. We want the date announced because we want the tickets on sale, and I think the club, the job the club have done to sell this out really deserves a lot of credit. But aside from that, it's a massive game. It's 2-2 from the first leg. Arsenal have got a big game to go and win here, and I really think if they can get to the final, just be an absolutely extraordinary achievement, particularly with the amount of injuries they have in the first 11. But I think first and foremost, that can wait till kick-off. I think right now we have to soak in the fact that 60,000 people are going to come and watch Arsenal women at Emirates Stadium, and I think that's a huge achievement for this club, particularly because Arsenal have been at the forefront of women's football for 30 years now, and women's football has taken another jump in the UK, and Arsenal are still insistent that they must be at the forefront of that jump in women's football in the UK. And I think that's absolutely extraordinary, because Chelsea played Barcelona at Stamford Bridge, and I'm going to tell you something, it wasn't even close to a sellout. And so I really think Arsenal deserve a lot of credit, and we should take a lot of pride in the fact that Arsenal really wanted this. They had the ambition to come and sell this game out. But aside from that, there's also a game to play, and perhaps as the day unravels, we'll go into a little bit more of the game, what it means, what happens, and who knows, maybe a trip to Eindhoven on the 3rd of June. Here's hoping. And we're underway in a sold-out Emirates Stadium. I think it's going to be a very tight, tense 90 minutes. Like I said before the game, I think Arsenal are going to have to fight and try and grit this out, just like they did last week. They've stayed with the back three largely because they don't really have any choice. They don't really have any players back. So Wolfsburg have brought Alexandra Popp back into the team, and she's going to play as a number 10 behind Eva Payol. But the reality of Wolfsburg their attack, so it's very fluid. There'll be lots of interchange of positions, and that's something that Arsenal are really going to have to deal with in this game. So that's Arsenal 1, Wolfsburg 0. Arsenal, as expected, had to absorb some pressure in the first few minutes. Wolfsburg very direct, hitting those long balls and counting on themselves to counter press. But Arsenal score, well, we think so. It's being checked for VAR. We had a VAR scare a minute ago for a penalty check for a handball by Lotte Wubben-Moy, which wasn't given. But what's happened here is there's a bit of a transition moment. Leah Volti picks the ball up in midfield after a good tackle from Katie McCabe, puts the ball through to Stina Blackstenius, who rounds the goalkeeper, rolls the ball into the net. But now we've got a bit of a painful wait for yet another VAR intervention.
Keep it rolling.
So let's just see. Goal given, 1-0, there we go. So that's VAR. I mean, you could say that's VAR going for Arsenal twice. I would say that's VAR getting involved unnecessarily twice. But there you go. Anxious wait, but big goal for Arsenal here to start the game. 1-0 to Arsenal, 3-2 to Arsenal on aggregate. So we're halfway through the first half, and the pattern of the game's really set in. It's set in quite early, actually, with Wolfsburg having probably more of the ball, again being very direct, really looking to get the ball into their front three, and Arsenal just sitting off and waiting to pick them off on the counter-attack. And Arsenal have had a lot of success doing that so far. That's where their goal came from. Wolfsburg elected to put Gilles Roord in a double pivot ahead of their defence, and I wonder if they might change that, because they're leaving a little bit of space, and when loose balls roll around that midfield, Victoria Palova, Leah Volti, Frida Marnham are picking them up and quickly putting the ball in behind that Wolfsburg defence. So both teams have had their chances. Arsenal have scored. Arsenal have had another chance after that with Victoria Palova. So Bit of a game of cat and mouse here, but so far so good for Arsenal. So it's 1-1, former Arsenal player Gilles Roord equalises, and you can hear the crowd trying to encourage the team. You just sense the last couple of minutes they've dropped back a bit. They haven't had the same threat on the counter. Pretty tired foul from Noelle Maritz, for which she got booked on Alexandra Pop. Wolfsburg sweep the free kick in. It's cleared first time, but it comes to the edge of the area. Gilles Roord chests it down and puts it into the corner. And to be honest, the last couple of minutes, you just sense that the momentum has swung Wolfsburg's way. So big test for Arsenal to respond to now. So that's 1-1 at half-time here at Emirates Stadium. Arsenal took an early lead, through Stina Blackstenius. And then later on in the half, former Arsenal player Gilles Roord equalised for Wolfsburg. And 1-1 is probably about right for the balance of this game, which is no surprise. I think everyone was really expecting a very even tie, very intense tie, very, very keenly fought. And that's what we've got so far. Arsenal again being physical, really, really pressing, really trying to counter-press, really trying to play on the break as well. Obviously, they've got that back three to try and absorb some of the pressure from Wolfsburg. And they're just finding a little bit of space, or at least they were finding a little bit of space in front of that Wolfsburg defence in transition. And that's where their goal comes from. But probably on about 35 to 40 minutes, you just sense that some of the intensity sapped out of that Arsenal performance a little bit, and they needed to get to half-time and they couldn't. They didn't defend a free kick very well. Gilles Roord equalises, so it's 1-1 here at half-time. It's all to play for. I think the thing I maybe worry about in the second half is that Wolfsburg have got 4 or 5 really good substitutes that they can bring on, and realistically, with the injuries Arsenal don't have that, so it's going to have to largely be at least 9 of these players, I think, who are going to have to put this effort in again in the second half, but I'm sure they'll give it a good go. So what a start to the half this is. Arsenal are 2-1 ahead. It's another goal for Stina Blackstenius. Very, very similar to the goal she scored in the first leg. Ball's played down the right. I think it's Victoria Palova again who puts the cross in. It comes across the face of goal. Stina Blackstenius puts it into the back of the net. Arsenal are 2-1 ahead. Another VAR check, and it looks like it's been ruled out for offside. Don't know. Would have to see that again. Maybe Victoria Palova on the right, offside. And Wolfsburg take the lead through Alexandra Pop. Flighted ball from a corner to the front post, and Pop, as she's done so many times in her career, was just there to leap up into the air and nod it in. And again, the last couple of minutes, you just got the sense that Wolfsburg were getting a bit of joy, particularly on Arsenal's right-hand side, and they'd forced a couple of corners, a couple of last-ditch tackles to force those corners. You felt Arsenal were getting a little bit stretched, and again, it's another period. They just needed to see out a 10-minute period, and they haven't quite been able to do it, and they've conceded from another set piece. So we're halfway through the second half. It's still Wolfsburg 2, Arsenal 1, and again, Arsenal are going to have to dig deep and find the resources to come back into this game. They've made a bit of a tactical switch. They've taken Stina Blackstenius off, which I find a bit surprising because I think she's really carried some threat today. Don't know whether she's carrying a knock or something like that, but they put Lena Hurtig on, and she's gone to the left wing with Frida Mornham playing a bit higher up, playing through the middle as a number 9. Maybe that gives Arsenal a bit more physicality. Lena Hurtig very, very strong in the air, so I don't know if we'll see Arsenal go even more direct. Maybe Hurtig to win some flick-ons and try and get Mornham in behind. We'll see how that develops, but Arsenal have rolled the dice here tactically in an attempt to try and salvage this game. Jen Beattie, who've just gone up front for the first time, I think, in about 9 years. Arsenal have put her up front, and it's pretty obvious what they want to do when they're putting Jen Beattie up front, so obviously she scored a header from across. Not subtle, but it's worked. Arsenal are back in it, 2-2. So we've got yet another VAR check, of course. Given. Well given. So first half of extra time, still 2-2, still Arsenal fighting and gritting, and they've just created the best chance and probably the only chance so far of extra time with Lena Hurtig. And again, Arsenal doesn't really feel tactical anymore. It doesn't feel like anything other than Arsenal just really putting everything on the line here. And I think that's what we're going to have to see for the next 22 and a half minutes as well. Just started the second half of extra time, and again, I'm running out of things to say here, but you know, Arsenal in that first half, they contained Wolfsburg quite well. I was worried about that first half of extra time, but Wolfsburg to that point, I don't know whether they're conserving energy for the second half of extra time, but they didn't really create anything. But we'll see in the last 15 minutes, it's quite possible that Wolfsburg were taking a breath themselves and preparing themselves for the second half of extra time, because certainly they're going to have superior legs at this point. But the battle that Arsenal continue to show, I've got no doubt that they'll be able to keep it up until the 120th minute, and we'll just see what happens. It feels like a coin toss now. So we're halfway through the second half of extra time, still 2-2. I don't know what's more symbolic of this Arsenal performance, the fact that Jem Beattie went up front and scored a goal, or the fact that she's been fighting off cramp for about half an hour now. She hasn't played a lot of minutes this season, and she's really having to go through the ringer here. Arsenal might have to bring on Taya Goldie, a centre-half, 19-year-old. She hasn't played a full game since March last year, though. Just recovered from an ACL injury, so that would be a bit of a risk. So really Arsenal having to make a toss-up here between having a cramp-ridden Jen Beattie or throwing Taya Goldie into her first full game in 14 months. So that's what Arsenal are dealing with here. There's about 7 minutes to go, still 2-2. And that's 3-2 to Wolfsburg. Paulina Bremer coming off the bench to score. And really just a tired mistake from Lotte Wubben-Moy, who tried to dribble out of defence. She's been immense today. She's had a fantastic performance, but I think it's just fatigue, a bit of a mistake. She gets tackled, cross comes in, and Paulina Bremer does what she always does in that 6-yard box. But you can hear the supporters really trying to rally this team, because they can see how much they've fought. And there are still a few minutes left for Arsenal to try and rally and try and dig deep to find something and force this game to penalties. So it's finished here at Emirates Stadium. Arsenal 2, Wolfsburg 3. Wolfsburg win 5-4 on aggregate. But I said before the game that I didn't know how the game would go, but that Arsenal would fight, and fight they did. Again, another big injury it looks like from Laura Wienreuter. Just seems to be happening every game at the moment, but Arsenal just kept finding a way back in. Going to go out on a limb and suggest that maybe some of the stuff we saw wasn't particularly coached or trained in terms of, I don't think Arsenal trained very much on Lotte Wubben-Moy crossing the ball to Jen Beattie, but they did what they had to do to get themselves back in the game. And in the end, I think the game just went on a couple of minutes too long, and Lotte, an error from Lotte Wubben-Moy at the end, and I think it's nothing but fatigue, to be honest. Tired mind, tired body. Tries to dribble the ball out of defence. It's a real shame, because she played so well. She really did. She was basically faultless to that point, and I think it was just fatigue. And again, I said around half-time that the amount of subs that Wolfsburg can realistically bring on compared to Arsenal was probably going to make a difference. We saw Jem Beattie at the end nursing cramp for well over half an hour. But Arsenal didn't really have the options to be able to bring her off. The only option they had was Taya Goldie, who hasn't played in 14 months. And that tells you what Arsenal were dealing with. And really, they had no right to take Wolfsburg this far in this tie, but they did. And like I said, they did it largely through guts and determination. But now they've got a big game on Friday night against Leicester. They've got to try and patch up. They've got to try and get a team out there and get back to winning ways. But I think you saw with the reception from the crowd from the end, how much everyone here appreciates what they saw, which was a really gritty, gutsy fight from Arsenal for not just 120 minutes but 210 minutes across this tie, and hopefully a lot of these fans come back, because I think they've really seen something. They've really seen what this team is about, certainly in terms of their character, and when they get a few of their players back next season, they'll see more than that as well.